So one of the absolute highlights of 27 years of sales mastery has been the experience that we've had with my good friend Tim Sanders. Tim has brought us Love is the Killer app, and that's how everything started in the sales mastery ecosystem with you. Gosh, that was 15 years ago, I believe.
At least, man.
Yeah.
At least.
And Tim also then came back and spoke about that beautiful, beautiful concept of today we are rich. And
in 2009,
wow,
when we didn't feel quite that rich in the industry,
right?
You know
We weren't
I mean?
rich.
So.
We weren't. We were feeling we're coming out of the GFC, right? And we're thinking, we're not rich. But that was such a powerful moment. We've decided that we're gonna three-peat with Tim, and he's got some amazing stuff that you've been cooking up over the last year and a half or so. Along the lines of trust, along the lines of value, along the lines of differentiation and competition. You're going to be with us October 14th through the 17th in San Diego. What say you about the message? You got a lot of people looking that are coming. They want to be excited about your message. You have a lot of people that are watching that haven't made the decision to come. Talk to us about what we're going to do together.
I'm going to reveal research that my company, Deeper Media, has conducted over the last few years about what it takes to keep a client and get that client's referrals in the face of competition. And not just human competition, right. Technology competition, digitization, automation.
Those were good words.
Automation. Okay. Set me up.
But no, that is a great word.
Automation. Okay. So we're going to pick that back, automation.
I got it right here. So your company, Deeper Media, has done a ton of research. What are you finding?
Well, at Deeper Media, we were asked to do research a few years ago on client loyalty in financial services.
Love it.
Okay?
Absolutely
and
love it.
We did a deep dive with thousands and thousands of people just like your clients. And what we were looking for is, how do you keep a client and get all of his or her referrals in the face of hyper competition? Whether that's human competition coming in from the edges wanting to compete on price, or whether it's technology-based competition,
right.
Self-service,
right.
Artificial intelligence,
right.
Automated advice. And what we found out is the way to maintain that high level of CRM is to make the leap from being a good option to an essential partner.
Listen to that. How do we go from a sea of sameness, a good option, one of thousands that can do the deal, to somebody who is absolutely essential?
That's right.
I don't want you to give away everything, but what are a couple of the tidbits on how does somebody move? They're going to see all this at Mastery, but in the next period of time between now and Mastery, how does somebody start to move to even get their head around what does essential mean?
Essential means that you are a partner to your client's life, and that you see getting a loan in a much larger picture. You understand that no one really wants a loan. They don't even want a home. They don't even want to move. There's something bigger going on in their life. And every time you meet with them, you give them ridiculous levels of value to solve the bigger problems. And you use loans as a platform to change their life, an excuse to get together and make radical changes. And that's not just true for the mortgage industry, it's true for financial advice, it's true for the real estate industry, it's true for any client decision that they consider really important. And that's the trigger, Todd. When a decision's important, that means it's connected to a higher order problem.
Yeah.
And so what I'm going to talk about is what the research says you need to do to develop these added value attributes, okay? And it's really going to be tricky because some of my pieces of advice are going to be counterintuitive. One of my pieces of advice is going to be, you should be spending as much time developing strategic questions as you are working on your presentation. You should find a way to only talk 15 to 20% of your next client engagement, yet your client walks out of the meeting saying, I've never learned more in a meeting during my life. We've studied the essential professional providers, hundreds of them, deep interviewed them, they figured this out. And their level of retention is close to 100%. They don't get referrals because somebody's looking for a loan. They get referrals because somebody's looking for a job. Somebody's getting a divorce. Someone's thinking of moving to San Diego from Los Angeles, and they get in earlier. And that's the last thing I was going to say is that being a good option is a bad strategy in a world where you're being brought in towards the end of the decision-making process. Our research, as well as Corporate Executive Board's research on financial services, says that the average client for a mortgage professional contacts that mortgage professional when they're about 65 to 75% through the entire home buying journey.
Yeah.
There's so much to unteach. There's so much leverage you've got to get back. What if we had such an essential partnership status with our clients that not only did they come to us first, we were referred even before the agent, even before the accountant, even before the wealth manager. What does that mean to leverage for the mortgage industry?
I think what you're, excuse me, edit. So I think what you're talking about So Tim, I think what you're talking about is this idea of how do I create such a compelling reason to do business together that my sphere will do everything they can to get whomever they know to approach me days, weeks, or even months in advance of thinking about getting serious for shopping for a home, buying a home, financing a home. And I think that is the ultimate play, isn't it? It's like, where do you get inserted in the process?
How do you become first call?
How do you become first call?
First person I call when there's a significant life change.
So when we were talking and we were kind of unpacking what you were going to talk about, this essential partner thing, whether it's loan officer to realtor, realtor to seller, certified financial planner to consumer, whatever it is, the options have become gargantuan in the business. I mean,
and at the same time, overwhelming.
Overwhelming,
yeah.
Right. And so how, I know you're going to unpack the whole thing at Mastery. What are two tidbits right now that you can give to everybody on, if I do this, I will become more essential?
Great. Okay. Here's one I think about a lot. Your clients are just overwhelmed with information.
Tons.
It is almost depressing for them to move into the home buying scenario because of all the things they have to consider, right? So the essential partner learns how to distill a sea of information into a gold nugget of insight. And they could take a relatively complex set of processes and break it down, sometimes to a simple, repeatable analogy that just clicks with the client. The client turns around and she tells her partner after the meeting, it works like this. The partner says, I get it, let's move forward. That's what the essential partner does, okay? The average person who says, I just want to add value, I just want to be a good option, they do exactly the opposite. When a client says, well, I'm kind of interested in this piece of the loan process, they back the truck up and they dump information on top of them by the barrel. And they overwhelm them with added value to the point the client throws their hands up and says, just tell me what to do. That is not a satisfied client. That is a client saying, I give up. And that is a situation where you're not going to get a referral. You're not going to get their best friend, and you may not get their next loan. Yeah. So I think the trick now is to move from fire hose of information to a true fountain of knowledge.
It's so beautiful. There's actually this concept of we have to deconstruct what we are calling value, because in our best day, about 90% of what we put out there, using the dump truck analogy, is not valuable. It is just confirming that we are a good option.
Yeah.
We send newsletters out as an industry, and we have recipes for this, or we have articles on that, and everybody's doing it, right? And to your point, delete, right? And so we're trying to get people to understand in this idea of essential partnering that it's not as much moments of value as it is, to your point, this gold nugget of value. Yeah. So less is actually more, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so from our vantage point, it's like you probably wouldn't be, but you need to ask yourself, do you have a list of 10 strategic questions that you can use with a consumer that you can use with a realtor, if you're a realtor, that you can use with a seller, that you can use with a buyer, if you're a financial planner or an accountant, you can use with a would-be prospect. This idea of a good question is the most powerful form of influence in the world has been missed by almost everybody.
Absolutely.
We are even guilty of asking the same questions
What keeps you up at night?
across the industry.
What are your financial goals? What
How
kind
much
of home-
do you make?
Yeah.
You know, how much do you owe?
So let's
how
talk
much
a
you
little
gonna
bit.
put down?
Not many companies do this, and as I've been working with some companies, there's a financial services company that started to do this where they collaborate, and they had this floating spreadsheet of questions that work. Okay, and so I've gotten into the dynamics of like, what's a question that works when it comes to financial advice? And here's what I've learned: a strategic question that works leads to a candid reveal on the part of the client. The candid reveal sometimes surprises the client and causes the client to seek the truth behind that reveal. It leads to storytelling. It leads to moments of vulnerability. It leads to connections at a higher level of need than the one that we're discussing. And it often causes the client to lay in bed at night contemplating the conversation. That is a strategic question. And sometimes when we see people interviewed on TV by the best of the best, I think of David Frost was one of the best of the best at doing this, that's the kind of questions they learned to ask. They weren't trying to ask gotcha questions. They weren't trying to ask questions that made them look smart or check the box questions you should be asking someone. They asked the questions that pierced the veil. And they led someone to go off script and reveal something they didn't plan on revealing. And then these magic interviewers learn to extend the answer. So you don't need a bunch of strategic questions. You need the question. And then you need to learn, and I'm going to share these listening skills. You've got to employ the same thing that David Frost did. Tell me more. The question without a question mark. And you've got to learn to just nod and grunt instead of interrupting and saying, that happened to me, or being trigger happy. You see, I find the good options where they're different than the essential partners is their style of listening. The good options very trigger happy. They only listen, Dan Pink would say they're just waiting for the other person to quit talking, right? That's not really listening. But they're listening, and then a trigger goes off and they think of a product line. They go, say, that reminds me, we should talk about a thing. I've learned that the essential partner is extremely patient, and oftentimes they wait until the following conversation to actually address what was talked about in the deep conversation.
Boy, I love it.
So I think that's a piece of being essential. Here's the last thing I would say about what we learned that I thought was surprising about what it took to be essential. The essential partner is always trying to close all the value gaps in full recognition of what the real client activity cycle is. Real client activity cycle.
What's that mean?
Okay, I'm getting wonky here, but I'm about to make it simple. Years ago, Sandra Vandermoy published a book called Customer Capitalism, and what she studied is the idea that you can't lock in a client. They'll get out of it. They'll resent it. They'll raise the cost of doing business with them, but you can get them to lock on if you actually understand what they're trying to accomplish and you surround that activity cycle with all the solutions they need, 360. There's not a single value gap that's unaddressed by you, if not by your services, by the people you introduce them to. She's learned in her research, they lock on to you because you are literally their lifeboat. Let me give you an example. Mercedes-Benz practiced this in Europe when they released the smart car. So, a little casket on wheels, right?
Right.
And what they decided, and this was years before Uber, and this is so brilliant, they realized no one wants to buy a car, really, they just want short-haul mobility. And so they asked themselves, if a person's just trying to go from A to B in Germany, what do they really need? Well, they need a car, and they probably need repair service for that car, and they probably need financing for that car, which is all they really offer. But they also need to rent a car when they got to get on the Autobahn, or they may be getting a car worked on. They need detailing. If they're a first-time buyer, like most of the smart car buyers, they need driver education. All of a sudden, they filled out a wheel, and they realized that rent-a-cars were a big value gap. They were losing business to BMW all the time on, right, where people discovered new brands. So they went on a very audacious campaign to say, we're either going to launch services or find partners, and we're going to really map that entire customer activity cycle, and we're going to close it. So let's bring it over to your business. When I talk to people in the mortgage industry or even real estate agents, I say the same thing. Like, what's the real customer activity cycle? They're getting a home. No, that's not it. They're relocating. You're close. That's not it. They're upgrading their life career. Yeah, now that's the activity cycle, to which getting a home and getting a loan is just a small piece of that puzzle. How can you become a part of that?
Right.
And I think that is really important because it drives the knowledge you acquire. It drives the way you build your network. It will make you diversify your network. See, I think the problem in the industry is that we are so reliant on realtors for our leads. When you take a look at our social circles, what is it? Other mortgage professionals and realtors and some title people and some ex-clients thrown in. But they can't provide the holistic solution to someone who's trying to upgrade their career or move their family up in quality of life away from living in an apartment to living in a home. So I think that this change of mind is the key to becoming an essential
So
partner.
we're talking about literally the essentialness of being an essential partner is way beyond the core product that almost everybody thinks they're in business to do.
That's right.
And so the key to the future, in my opinion, is using this idea of essentialness to open the floodgates to other life experience opportunities to which you can either be involved or you can be the bridge to somebody who can help. And I think that's what Mercedes-Benz does. I think that's what any smart business does. They look at, here's the core service, here's the core reason for that service, but it is so much bigger than that. And I think what ends up happening is because we're as an industry, and this is for everybody, real estate, lending, whomever, we are programmed around this kind of one and done behavior. Help them buy the home, and then on to the next buyer.
And then we kind of
Help them sell the home.
we put them in the CRM Salesforce tickler file, total expert, whatever. So we put them in this CRM tickler file. It's one and done, but we're going to hit you with emails, and all of a sudden, they don't give us the referral when their buddy gets a home. We're like, we're furious. Like, what do you mean? I sent you wine. I sent you 15 video emails. Are you kidding? Why didn't I get the next loan? And the reality is, high touch is high trust, right? And you've got to be high touch from the beginning and not just staying in touch.
I think one of the key things I would say to all of you that are coming to mastery or considering it is you have got to understand that the future is not about promotion. It's about emotional connection. It's not about sending stuff out. It's not about how many offers you have. It's not about blah, 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 blah. It's about reversing that entire trend. If you don't want competition, ask the questions they don't ask.
That's right.
If you don't want competition, say the things they don't say. If you don't want competition, be in touch in unique ways, not superficial ways. The noise that we send out as an industry does nothing for trust.
And here's what
Zero.
Here's what kills me is when we did our research, we found that going in, when we would talk to loan officers and realtors and financial advisors, we'd say, what's your greatest fear? And they say, the world's being automated and everything's going to self-service and we feel like they're just going to automate our service. And then we ask, well, how do you keep in touch? Talk to me about customer relationship management. They go, it's the dangest thing. We automate everything. We just automate everything. Keep in touch that way. And I go, you see the problem here, right? Right. So we got to cut the cord, if you will. And if we want people to give us every home for the rest of their life, if we want people to give us every one of their friends going through a significant life change, we have to earn it. We have to go a lot deeper with them than a loan.
Right.
If we expect them to give us their life of referrals and home buys and everything. So I think that's a real issue, and this noise is really interesting too, because if I go all the way back to 1928 and I think about an ism that Dale Carnegie would say over and over again to his students in Manhattan at the YMCA, it was this:
oh my gosh,
you will accomplish more developing a sincere interest in people than you will ever accomplish trying to get people interested in you.
Boom.
That's what we're learning, man. That's what we're learning.
That's awesome.
So we'll see you at Sales Mastery October
14,
through the
15, 16,
17th.
17. How to go from a good option to essential partner. We're going to have a blast together. Tim, good hanging with you, man.
All right, buddy.
Yeah.